In the fading centuries of the 3rd century after the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ, when the mighty power of the Roman Empire stretched across continents, the land of Egypt stood as one of its richest provinces, a land filled with ancient temples, fertile valleys, and cities echoing with various voices. Egypt, once ruled by pharaohs whose names were carved into stone, had now become a province under Roman authority, governed by imperial laws. Yet beneath the surface of political power, a far greater struggle was unfolding, one of faith, truth, and the search for God in a world of idols. During this time, Christianity was still young and often misunderstood, spreading quietly among humble families, moving from house to house, whispered in secret gatherings. Many Roman rulers feared the growing influence of Christians, and as a result, waves of persecution rose and fell across the land like storms. It was into this world of political power and spiritual hunger that a child would be born, whose life would one day reshape the history of devotion. Around the year 251, in a quiet village near the Nile, a child was born into a wealthy Christian family, known later as St. Anthony the Great. His parents were respected members of the Christian community, known for their devotion, raising their son in an environment shaped by prayer and discipline. Despite their material abundance, they valued spiritual richness above earthly treasures, teaching their son that life was measured by obedience to God. From his childhood, Anthony was known for his quiet and thoughtful nature, preferring to remain close to his family and observe life with careful attention. Although he received only basic education, he developed a deep love for listening to the sacred scriptures whenever they were read aloud in church. As the years passed and Anthony grew into adolescence, a sudden and painful change arrived without warning, breaking the sense of stability. Both of his parents fell ill and passed away within a short period, leaving him with vast responsibility and deep sorrow. Their death left Anthony as the guardian of his younger sister and the heir to a considerable estate, including land, wealth, and property. As Anthony mourned, he began to reflect deeply on the meaning of life, the fragility of possessions, and the certainty of death. One day, as Anthony walked toward the local church, his mind was filled with thoughts about his responsibilities and the future. As he entered the church, the sacred scriptures were being read aloud, and the words spoken would strike his heart with life-altering force. The passage read, "If you desire to be perfect, go, sell what you have, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Follow me." Anthony received them as a direct command addressed personally to him through the living power of the gospel itself. After leaving the church, Anthony did not dismiss the words, but instead began to act with remarkable courage and clarity. He first arranged for the care of his younger sister, entrusting her to a community of faithful Christian women. Anthony then began to distribute his possessions among the poor, giving away fields, livestock, and material goods with open hands. Neighbors watched with disbelief as the young man transformed from a wealthy landowner into a servant of God possessing little more than faith. With his wealth distributed, Anthony turned toward a new path, leading him away from society and into the landscapes of solitude. He sought guidance from older Christians living on the edges of villages, learning how to control his desires and endure hunger. Gradually, the noise of daily life faded as he moved further from the village, settling in abandoned places such as tombs and ruined structures. These early steps marked the beginning of a journey that would lead him deep into the deserts, where silent nights would become his companions. The battles he faced would not be against human enemies, but against the unseen forces that tested the strength of his faith. As the young ascetic Anthony continued to distance himself from the distractions of ordinary life, his desire for solitude grew stronger with each passing day, urging him to seek places that others feared, places abandoned by society and marked by silence, darkness, and isolation. For he believed that in such places the soul could be stripped of worldly attachment and brought face to face with the presence of God. Not far from the edges of his village stood ancient burial grounds, tombs carved into the earth and left deserted by generations who feared the spirits. It was within these lonely chambers that Anthony chose to dwell, transforming a place associated with death into a sanctuary of prayer and spiritual struggle. Within the cold stone walls of the tomb, the air remained heavy and still, broken only by the faint sounds of wind moving through cracks. During the long hours of the night, when darkness covered the land, Anthony remained awake, lifting his mind toward God through fasting and prayer. Yet solitude does not merely reveal peace, it also exposes weakness, fear, and hidden struggles within the human heart. Anthony would soon encounter battles far more terrifying than the loneliness of isolation. Strange disturbances began to interrupt the stillness, sounds echoing through the tomb at unexpected moments and movements that could not be explained. Tradition records that Anthony endured fierce assaults from demonic powers, forces that sought to terrify him and drive him away from holiness. At times, the disturbances grew violent, filling the tomb with sounds resembling wild beasts and crashing forces, shaking the very walls. One night, the disturbances reached a level of intensity, unlike anything he had previously experienced, transforming fear into a direct and brutal confrontation. According to the ancient accounts, the forces manifested with such violence that Anthony was struck repeatedly and left wounded, his body weakened and bruised. When friends from the nearby village discovered his condition and carried him from the tomb, many assumed his experiment had come to a tragic end. Yet even in the depths of pain, Anthony refused to abandon his calling, and once his strength returned, he demanded to be taken back. There he lifted his voice toward heaven, declaring his refusal to abandon the path. Then a brilliant light suddenly filled the tomb. Following these early battles, Anthony intensified his discipline, shaping his daily life according to strict routines of fasting, prayer, and manual labor. As stories of his endurance circulated, curiosity grew, drawing visitors who wished to witness the remarkable life of this solitary ascetic. This quiet gathering marked the early beginnings of what would later become organized monastic life. As the years passed and Anthony's discipline grew stronger with each trial, the desire for deeper solitude began to stir within his heart once again. He sought to move beyond the tombs and ruins that sheltered his early struggles, seeking a place where silence reigned without interruption. The deserts of Egypt stretched endlessly beyond the Nile Valley, unforgiving landscapes where scorching sunlight burned across barren hills and empty horizons. Guided by an inner conviction, he journeyed deeper into the desert until he discovered an abandoned fortress situated near a remote mountain. This fortress, isolated and sealed from intrusion, became the place where Anthony would undertake one of the most extraordinary periods of solitude in history. With unwavering determination, he entered the fortress and sealed the entrance behind him, committing himself to remain there for years, separated from society. Anthony crossed a threshold that few had dared to approach. choosing a life that demanded complete surrender and trust in God. Within these stone walls, Anthony embraced a life of profound solitude that lasted for nearly 2 decades, years marked by inner transformation. He lived without companionship or conversation, depending instead upon strict routines of fasting, prayer, and manual labor that filled his days. Food was delivered only occasionally, lowered over the walls by visitors, while water was drawn from limited sources within the fortress grounds. The heat of the day bore down without mercy, while the cold of the night wrapped itself around the fortress in silence. Yet the greatest battles he faced were those that unfolded within the unseen realm, where temptations and fears rose like waves against his faith. Memories of his former life returned, images of wealth and comfort, yet he resisted these temptations with steadfast prayer, refusing to abandon his path. His will strengthened and his spirit sharpened like a blade, transforming him into a warrior of faith rooted in spiritual endurance. Ancient accounts describe moments when Anthony experienced visions of terrifying creatures intended to frighten him into returning to society. Visions of wild animals roared with fury, yet even in the face of such illusions, Anthony remained unmoved. Trusting in the protection of God, he recognized that the greatest victories were won within the mind, where thoughts were examined and surrendered to the will of God. Although Anthony remained hidden, news of his extraordinary endurance continued to spread across the surrounding regions. Curiosity transformed into reverence as stories circulated of his victories over temptation and his unwavering dedication to prayer. Gradually, groups of seekers began to gather outside the fortress walls, settling nearby in makeshift shelters and caves. Though Anthony remained unseen, his presence shaped the behavior of those who gathered, making him a living example to all. These followers adopted practices of fasting and prayer, and through their imitation, the foundations of organized monastic life began to take form. After nearly 20 years of isolation, the moment arrived when the doors of the fortress would once again be opened, revealing Anthony standing before them, no longer an inexperienced youth, but a figure marked by strength, serenity, and spiritual authority. Observers were struck by his appearance. His face reflected peace rather than exhaustion, demonstrating that discipline had preserved his vitality. This moment marked the emergence of Anthony as a spiritual father, prepared to guide others with wisdom drawn from years of silent struggle. He welcomed seekers with patience and humility, teaching that holiness required consistent obedience in the small details of daily life. The scattered individuals began to organize themselves into structured communities, forming clusters of dwellings where prayer and labor became the rhythm of existence. Under his influence, the desert transformed from a place of fear into a place of spiritual growth, where men abandoned wealth to pursue God. This movement expanded into a network of monastic settlements that would shape Christian spirituality across generations. Yet Anthony remained aware that his journey was not yet complete, and that new challenges awaited him beyond the boundaries of the desert. As the reputation of Anthony spread throughout Egypt and beyond, reaching cities and villages where believers spoke of his wisdom, endurance, a time came when his presence would be required not only within the quiet solitude of the desert, but also within the crowded streets of one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. The city of Alexandria, known for its towering structures and bustling marketplaces and vibrant intellectual life, stood as a center of learning, Yet it was also a place where Christians faced waves of persecution. During periods of hostility, many Christians in Alexandria were imprisoned, tortured, or executed for refusing to abandon their devotion to Christ. News of their suffering traveled across the land, stirring concern among leaders of the Christian community. At this critical moment, Anthony, who had spent years hidden, felt compelled to leave the solitude of the desert and journey toward the city. He went not for personal gain, but to strengthen the hearts of those who faced persecution, and to witness to the power of faith. His arrival in Alexandria caused astonishment, for the solitary ascetic who had lived among rocks now walked among crowds, offering encouragement to the imprisoned. He comforted families who feared losing loved ones. Rather than retreating from danger, Anthony moved toward it with courage. He demonstrated that true devotion required not only solitude and prayer, but also willingness to support others during moments of suffering. In Alexandria, Anthony became known as a spiritual guide and defender of the faith. During a period when doctrinal disputes threatened the church, Anthony supported the teachings of Athanasius of Alexandria, whose defense of doctrine helped preserve the integrity of Christian belief during turbulent times. When opponents attempted to question his understanding, Anthony responded not with anger or pride, but with calm conviction. After fulfilling his mission in Alexandria, Anthony returned once more to the quiet landscapes of the desert, choosing again the life of solitude. Settling upon a remote mountain, he established a simple dwelling where he continued his daily practices of fasting, prayer, and manual labor. He maintained the same discipline that had guided him since his earliest days. As the years advanced, his words carried even greater weight. Those who gathered around him recognized that they were listening to a man whose life had become a testimony to unwavering faith. Anthony also emphasized the importance of remembering death, not as a source of fear, but as a reminder of the eternal life promised. In the year 356, having lived more than 100 years, Anthony sensed his earthly journey was drawing to a close. He prepared himself with the same calm determination that had defined every stage of his life. Gathering his closest disciples, he offered final instructions, urging them to remain faithful to Christ and to continue supporting one another in humility and love. Then, with quiet dignity, Anthony lay down and surrendered his spirit peacefully. Although Anthony's physical life came to an end, his influence expanded, shaping the development of monastic communities throughout Egypt and the Middle East. Today, the memory of his life continues to inspire monks, priests, and ordinary believers, reminding them that true strength is found in humility. From the silent deserts to the monasteries across the world, the legacy of Anthony endures, a testimony to the power of faith lived fully.